think about the kind of things that somebody would ask you. If you were looking at your resume, what kind of questions would you ask you? Try to put yourself in our shoes and climb inside of our head and think about if you had to hire you, what kind of questions would you ask?
Well, personally, it depends on the company, but it also depends on the job and it depends on your background. So almost, you know, this job market is unlike anything we've seen in a long time. And so you know, it used to be you could have one resume and just send it to 20 jobs. These days, you almost have to redo your resume for every job, and the competition is there, and for the most part, companies, at least sometimes, they look for reasons to eliminate you before because the reality is, if I have a job open, there's going to be more people out there today that can do that job. And so if I have a stack of resumes, a stack of applications, first thing we may do is just eliminate, just to get in. And eliminating you could be for any reason. Misspelled word, resume 3 pages long. My email address is sexy7@yahoo.com. You're gonna eliminate those, and then I have a small stack, and more than likely there's gonna be several people in that small stack that can do the job.
Investing. And once you get in, we're gonna reinvest in you. We're gonna keep pushing you to get better. So we don't want you stagnant. So I just want you to kind of give those words of encouragement. Don't beat up yourself. You're trying, you're fighting. We want to see that.
This sounds like a cliche, but what my colleague here says is true. Your attitude does so much for how we perceive you. You know, we've all had struggles. You don't need to know about mine. I don't need to know about yours. But we've all had them. And your attitude goes so much further than what's on that piece of paper.
1,000 people. Well, obviously there are 970 other people at home while you all are here. So I look at those types of things as well. As who is really interested in their future? Who is really interested in what they have going on? And coming to events like this, asking the questions, probing, and being involved in your success. You know, some people just want to sit at home and type on the internet and hope the phone rings. You have to be active. You have to hustle. You have to get in certain places that aren't. I mean, this may be a non-traditional way for someone to get a job. I'm paying attention to who's here, and I may have a 5-minute conversation with you. And so many people have sent me emails don't get that conversation with you. And I see that there's a need I have, and I can match you up with, you know, something I may have. And that might be the way you got in. It might not have anything to do with your resume font, your professional etiquette. It may be just our 5 minutes with each other. And that might be what it took to get me interested and say, come on in. I might not even look at the resume. I'll say, bring your resume with you when I interview. That way, the resume had nothing to do with it, it was you. So I look at that as do the intangibles that it takes to get to that road you're trying to go.
I have a question here, one in the back.
And work up, get my certification, and be in the profession that I love. So stick your foot in the door, but HR internships, few and far between.
All right. Sounds good. Well, before we go into the interview, I want to tell you about a book that was written by Mallory Chamberlain. It's about $4 and you can get it online. It is designed to help you write the resume. So if you have any questions about that, you can see me afterwards. I'll give you the link rather than wasting time doing that now. We have about 15 minutes left if we don't go over. And I'd like to move things on and talk a little bit about the interview. We've got the resume together now. We've gotten the interview. We're sitting there and they say, tell me a little bit about yourself. How do you respond? Anybody want to take that one? No? Pam?
Well,
Yes. Ms. Webb?
yes, and I've been really working on myself. I did find out that, you know, in that, giving that question, I would like to know more about that position. Because I want to know more about that position and what you're needing and what you're looking for, so that when I tell you about myself, I want to highlight those things that you're needing.
I think she's on top.
First of all, that tell me about yourself question is one you can practice. I mean, because you're going to get it. You know you're going to get it in most cases, and so it's one you can be prepared for. I would practice it. In some jobs, I would even record myself and listen to it. Just supposed to. And I saw a study once, and it's probably about 10 years ago, and it said that the interviewer makes up his or her mind in the first 5 minutes. So if you think about that, what happens in the first 5 minutes? They see you, they shake your hand, and they say, tell me about yourself. Okay? And so you want to, again, think about the job, think about the qualifications and the skills. And this is because I don't know what other questions are going to come after this. There's some things about me that I think fit this job that I need to highlight. So in that tell me about myself, I would try to make sure I get those key points. Because if he or she makes up their mind in the first 5 minutes, then that means I got 5 minutes to sell myself. And that tell me about yourself questions is in there, along with the appearance and all that other stuff.
Here's a brief summary of sort of what recruiters are trained. There's two kinds of questions that recruiters are trained. If they're trained recruiters, they've been experienced. One is called a situational question, and one is called a behavioral-based question. Now, there's a lot of research that HR people read that says structured interviews are, next to testing, is the most valid way to select people. Big, sophisticated HR departments know that. One of the other ways in which increases the chance that the person you're hiring matches the job is called behavioral-based interviewing. What that means is the interviewers are trained to ask you questions where you give an example of something in the past that showed you with a skill or competency set, and that the belief is that evidence of that skill being exhibited in the past is a predictor of it being in the future. Good interviewers know about that research, and they will ask you behavioral-based questions. So, for example, if you're applying for a customer service job, they would ask a question like this: tell me about a time you dealt with a very difficult customer. How did you handle it? All right. A situational interview would be something like this, or a question. A situational question would be, a customer comes in, and you're a teller, and they give you a hard time. What would you do? See the difference between those questions? So a trained interviewer is more likely going to ask you the behavioral-based question. Now, here's the reality. I've been teaching my kids about behavioral-based interviewing for years. And what they tell me when they go out and do interviews is that half the recruiters, they're not trained in interviewing. Half the managers, in fact, not half, 5% of the managers aren't trained. So they're not going to ask you behavioral-based questions because they don't know any better. Bottom line is, though, if you are prepared for a behavioral-based question, it doesn't matter whether they ask it or not, you've got it. So if they ask you a question, you say, just think how exciting this would be. Let me tell you about a time I dealt with an existing customer. That sounds more powerful than, well, if I had a new customer, I would do this. So what I have told my children, all of which have successfully landed a job in my head, to have at least 10 examples of things that you've dealt with in the past. They're vivid, they have real characters in them, they're little mini stories, because that lights up an interview. Interviewers that are interviewing a lot, they get bored. They've been interviewing all day, and they've heard the same thing over and over again, but if you can tell them a story about some success you've had and what you've done, you're going to light them up.
And I would piggyback on what John said. Tell me a story, get me excited. It needs a beginning, middle, and an end.
And you can use
But some of the worst interviews I've ever had were people that got got so wrapped up in their story that, okay, this is gone with wind time, and we need to move here. So,
Well, the other thing that it does is when sometimes when people kind of